We're live, so say hello to the fine people. Oh. Sit here. Okay, we're done. I'm going to count now. 1, 2, 3. I mean, I might be able to. I can count to 10 twice. Okay, we're done. I'm going to count now. That's weird. I guess I always assumed that the way that the streaming would work, right, was the lag. I mean, when we stop, it would still, all that stuff that was queued up would still make it out. But, I mean, clearly it doesn't. Yeah, they don't have your audio yet.
It's good stuff.
All right. How about now? Can you guys hear his dumb butt now?
I have many wise things to say. Ah.
All right, there he comes. And John, nice to see you, my friend. I feel like sometimes I talk to you a whole bunch, and I don't talk to you at all. And it's very very back
Tomorrow's
and forth.
Anzac Day, so happy Anzac Day to the Australians and New Zealanders in the crowd.
Yeah. Well, we've had all types of and my kids were out Friday, but not Monday. All right, so we had those Easter holidays. I don't know. What did you guys have?
I don't think we had any of those.
Heathens?
I don't know.
No.
And I don't know how your schedule is right now, but trying to squeeze all the end of year stuff in, like all the stuff the kids have been practicing all year, band and orchestra and choir, and all that stuff is hitting all at the same time. And it is this week and next week is just.
See, we do a pretty good job of it's spread out, right? So like the kids singing were a few months ago, right? We don't have any this last minute rush other than field trips. I'm going on a field trip tomorrow. I know you're jealous.
Where are you going?
Cedar Creek, big.
So we've had a couple of those, and I've not been able to go as far as I've wanted.
Yeah, this one was specifically for dads, so I couldn't. I didn't really get any options.
So somewhere, if you want to talk about the new Edge.
Just throw it down there in the bottom when we get to the point where we start saying, all right, what are we going to talk about next? I can warn you that both Kay and I make me really angry.
So now...
Or J and L now make me... I can badmouth either one of those companies with the best of them.
You know, I'm starting to detect a pattern if it's you and this company having a problem and you and that company having a problem.
I mean... Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So the internet is full of people complaining about L. So that one's a pretty common issue that they just choose not to fix.
What is the issue?
White balance just turns itself back on.
Ah.
Every single time you use the camera.
Gotcha.
So
it does. I thought that was me. I thought I was screwing it up.
Yep. The whole world has it. So I've lost hours of footage at this point because of it. Because I refuse to use it. Right. It blinks and I just can't bring myself to do that. So I keep getting to re-record because of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, they're new. And we're talking about Logitech video cameras, folks. Their new controller thing has got some nice additions, but it's got some weird things to it that I've not completely wrapped my head around.
Is that the gaming software, like Logitech gaming hub or something like that?
So it might have come with that. So Logitech Capture.
No, I don't have that one. Okay, I read something that said the new Logitech Game Stream Hub or whatever doesn't have this problem. So if I install that, in the 5,000 gigs of bloatware that it adds, then I could not have white balance problems.
So I will send you a screenshot of the thing that I've got.
Don't send it in Skype though, because it'll mess up.
Oh,
It'll move your pretty face, and you don't want your pretty face uncentered. So
no, no, we don't. So I'll put it in Slack then.
there you go. But yeah.
So that is what I'm using.
No, I do not have whatever that is.
I don't know if it's better or worse. Again, it's got some clumsy control things. I have trouble doing some things that I think I shouldn't have trouble doing, but
Yeah. But yeah, so white balance is really, okay. What I did was I recorded everything like Friday morning, and I just packaged it all up, and I was going to try and edit it and produce it at the in-laws with the world's worst internet, and I got there, and then I like had to fight for this, fight for that. I had to fight for 2 meg downloads, and then I got ready to go, and I realized that the footage blinked, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm going to lose it."
yeah, that's painful. That is painful. I'm trying to think of any other. We talked about the Tesla stuff.
The chat room's very quiet. I wonder everybody's taking the day off. They're all getting ready for Anzac Day. You look like you're pooping when you look up. Oh, and you muted yourself too, so whatever clever thing you just said didn't come through.
I said maybe I am.
Yes, fair enough.
You don't know. Uh, where? So I don't see. Oh, I'm on the dashboard. That's probably why. So why don't I see our live thing? Maybe it's because it's under the live tab.
Nah.
Because I was going to see if anybody left any comments in there. I don't see. Yeah, it took your description and everything. Holy cow.
I know it's. I mean, I'm assuming that the computer's going to reboot or something as soon as we go live because nothing's went wrong yet.
I'm gonna go buy some lottery tickets, maybe buy some stock today and something.
All right, it's John is talking about his watchfulness of MSFT.
That I've seen a couple of things about that.
What are they?
So John, you don't want to bring up Nokia and stocks in front of this guy over here.
Yeah, I have a lot of pain and suffering around Nokia, but
Mm-hmm. It causes him much frustration.
what? Well, Microsoft is down 26 cents right now. What's up with that?
Buy. What's it at? What's its
125.
So that's I forget what I bought it at. Less,
You bought around 43.
yeah.
Because then you couldn't bring yourself to go back in at 48 or 49.
And yes.
All right.
Yep, that's true story.
Yeah, I think I bought my first batch where John's thinking. I think mine were first at 22.50 something.
Yep,
And
I bought it at 43. Yep.
I know your portfolio, the goods and the bads.
It's not that yeah, it's so it's at 125 now. What's the year high? There we go. So it's close to a year high.
Yeah, it's been on a tear.
I gotta close that. It is 1 minute after the hour. Do we want to go ahead and?
No, now I'm looking at stock numbers and being sad and happy and ticker by ticker. Yes, we should definitely go live though.
All right, so let me move OneNote a little bit.
I'm sure no one is coming here for stock advice.
Yeah, and if they are, good Lord, they could not be worse. So I think I saw Brett in the chat room. Lori is not on today, so you guys are in charge of taking notes for title suggestions, and then post them after the show so I can put them in there. They've been very helpful. Are you ready to go, Mr. Young?
I can pretend.
My hair and I are ready to go. Visual cue for the producer. Jumping jacks on Shane's end. Very good.
Ooh, we'll
3,
out now.
2, 1. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast, episode 430. I'm Todd, and I forget which side you're on, but I think you're Shane.
I'm over here.
I need to watch one of these at some point so I can remember which side anybody's on.
Why would anyone want to watch this? So,
Hello,
my name is Shane Young, and I am the guy who tries to make Todd not be so terrible at this. So,
yep. And we haven't talked about this at the beginning of the while, but you can find us on YouTube. So if you listen to the MP3 version of this, you can find us on YouTube at Todd Clint Netcast, I think. And we also have a video version. There's an RSS feed. We post the notes and links and all that every week at toddclint.com/podcast, whatever number it is. So this will be toddclint.com/podcast 430. It's got all the subscription links and all that. Should be able to find it on all of your favorite podcast aggregators. If not, let us know and we'll submit it as best we can. A lot of ways to enjoy this particular podcast.
I know, and this one's just so much fun because you get to see our inability to point at each other, and the camera issues, and the white balance issues. You just never know what fun visual things you're going to get to see if you watch.
There are many ways that we can screw the visuals up on this. That is a true story. Before we go further, to thank the folks at SysKit. I don't know if, speaking of visual things, I've got my sign up here for SysKit. We decided last week I got a level out, and you guys couldn't really see it because of but that's perfectly square and level with the core of the Earth and the magnetic fields and all that. It's
I believe Brett decided that your wall was just uneven, right? That was the key here. That your house is like sinking, and this is the first sign. So
that's as much as it floods around here. If my house starts sinking, I'm in big trouble. I'm gonna need a canoe.
But thank you to the fine folks at SysKit. They're very kind.
They're very good, and they got some new stuff coming out. And I was gonna put it in the notes, and I forgot you and I started chatting. I think they've got a new version of Security Manager coming out this month, something like that. So yeah, they've got all kinds of great stuff, and I'm on customer calls all the time, and some of them are like specking out upgrades and things like that. And I think almost every call there is some pain point that a customer who's migrating from on-prem to the cloud or something, they're like, well, how do I keep track of this, or how do I find that? The answer is SysKit 3 out of 4 times, because there's SP Doc Kit and Security Manager and all these kind of things. So check those folks out, syskit.com.
Very cool. Also, so speaking of that, production notes are getting ourselves ramped up for the meat of the show.
Yep.
I think afterwards we're going to do the Game of Thrones spoilers again, right? Does that sound like a fun time?
Yeah. So at the recording of this particular podcast, the previous podcast has not come out yet.
Oops.
But at the end of last podcast, 429, Shane and I, we closed everything off and said our goodbyes and all that, and then we left the camera rolling, and we just chatted like people do about episode 1 of season 8 of Game of Thrones, and we had so much fun. We're going to do it again this week. Again, I haven't put that one out yet, so I don't know if anybody that was listening actually cared or not, because no one's had a chance to listen to it yet. But we will continue to do that until we're told not to by HBO or whoever.
And on the bright side, we were going to have the conversation either way. So really all we did was just leave the camera going and, edit out the cuss words, and we were good. So.
Yep. Oh, I was supposed to edit out the cuss words.
Details.
Yep. That'll be in production notes for next week. Speaking of topics, though, probably the real reason everybody's looking at this.
Yeah.
A lot of great things. So you and I were talking a little bit before the show about how there hasn't been a lot of new content about Office 365 coming out of Microsoft in the last month or so. And I think we probably have different views on that. But what there has not been is any shortage of non-Microsoft stuff coming out about Office 365. And one of them was one that I thought of you when I saw this.
Aww.
So our friend Stefan Bauer over in Austria has a great blog. You can go to n8d-at and see his blog. Stefan is not really a SharePoint person. He's more of a web person, a design person that just happens to also use SharePoint. And he brings an interesting perspective to Office 365 and SharePoint because of that. He's not encumbered by all these ridiculous things that we are as SharePoint folks. But one of the things that he blogged a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week, I forget, was this idea of using hub sites in Office 365 as archive hubs.
Okay.
So this is one of the things I have. Most of my customers these days are moving to Office 365. So there's one set of information architecture discussions we have there. We have some limitations. We can't have different web apps. We can't have different managed paths. Some of those tools you and I have talked about in the past. But we do have some other functionality, things like hub sites and Office 365 groups and all that. Um, but one of the things that you and I, spent 10 years telling people was when you're setting up your web apps, you're going to have portal.company.com, you're going to have mysites.company.com. Then you maybe have archive.company.com if you've got a lot of projects that have a finite ending, but you don't want to get rid of them, but you don't want to have them on expensive disk, and you don't want to back them up all the time. You put them in their own web app. They go in their own content databases. You back them up once a month. You set them to read only. All these things that you and I talked about, we can't do any of that anymore in Office 365. Mm-hmm. And Stefan's thing was kind of a good idea where you do that same idea, but you use a hub site for archives. And then you take these site collections for projects and fiddle with the permissions. I can't remember if he talks about that in here or not. But you basically have this hub site that people go to, and all the archived site collections for archived projects or whatever use that hub site as their hub parent. And then you can go there and search only archived information, projects that you know are finished, things like that.
That's not a terrible idea.
And I saw the title. So the title of this blog post is introducing the idea of archive hub sites. And like as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh my God, yes. How? So I definitely like that. And I told Stefan how much I like that. Now, one of the things that gets complicated with this is in SharePoint on-prem, we could set a site collection to read only. There was a switch for that. There is no switch for that in Office 365. And so then you have to employ some other tools to make sure that this archived information doesn't get changed. So there's compliance things, you can do it that way. Even if the SharePoint site is part of a group, you can go in at the SharePoint level and fiddle with the permissions so that the group members can't change. I don't know that I would go so far as to recommend that.
Yeah.
But it is something that you can do if you want to make sure that those archived site collections don't get changed.
There's one of the interesting things with SharePoint Online, right? Is the concept of a read-only site is really, really went the way of the dodo bird. And I mean, if I think back to the architecture we used to build, that was such a common thing to do that you have to really wrap your head around this idea that, man, they just want to share everything with everybody all the time, and that's hard.
Yeah, and so there's a couple things of that. So I think if you do that these days, you need a comm site. So that's what we're thinking about when we think of the old, when you and I would talk about the portal.company.com, we would say, there'll be an HR site collection that only HR can write to, but everybody can read.
Yep.
You're right. That's just not natural in Office 365 now. But again, that's going to be like a comm site or something like that. The the group connected sites is where it really gets confusing. Because, and I mentioned this in a blog post or something that I wrote a while back, that with SharePoint on-prem, permissions were maddening. Like trying to figure out how to get SharePoint to do the permissions that I had in my head was just horrible. And I remember, I think with the SharePoint 2010 book, I don't remember which one of us, maybe it was me that wrote the permissions chapter. And I just remember sitting in a hotel room because I was traveling and just going through every single screen until I could, recite to my cat what everything was on that page. And it took hours. It was just horrible. But at the end of the day, I could almost always wrestle with SharePoint and get it to apply the permissions exactly the way that I wanted after I figured all these bits out. With SharePoint Online, we still have those hidden screens, so all that stuff hasn't changed. But once you introduce groups, since the group permission isn't just for SharePoint, it's also for Exchange and Teams and Planner and Streams and all that. Now your permissioning has to be at the lowest common denominator. So read-only, which like you said is a staple of SharePoint, how does that work in Teams? Like how do you have a read-only in Teams? Oh, that's lurking. That's not cool. We don't like people to do that. So I think that's a big reason why they don't have read-only for groups, because they can't apply it the same in an intuitive way across all the products. So in one way, groups has made membership or management of membership really easy, but in the other way, it's kind of cut us off a little bit.
Yeah, and I think part of that is also it's kind of old school versus new school, right? So you and I grew up in the age of trying to lock everything down, right? That was what IT's mandate was to say no to everything. And the darn kids these days, right? They're more into, everything is shared. My whole life is an open book. All my company files are an open book. And to them, they're like, why would I have stuff out there that I didn't want other people to see and edit. And it's just
Yeah.
a generational shift, and we've got to be brave soldiers and move our butts to the newer way of thinking where read only is not the default stance, and it's hard.
Yep. Yeah. So I was talking to Mark a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how in Europe they're getting rid of the idea of paper money in a lot of places, and they pay each other by phone app.
Yep.
And so we were talking about Venmo, which is very popular over here. Europe has their own suite of those, but Venmo is very popular. And not only is it an app where you pay people, but it's also, like you said, it's a social app where if I pay you, send you a Venmo for $75, it shows up and other people can see that I paid you $75. To Mark and I, and probably to you, that seems ridiculous. Why would anybody want that? But apparently for the younger generation that uses it, that's part of the fun. Like, why would you not want somebody to see that you paid Shane $75?
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes, right, that feeds into the whole, like China and their social credit score, right?
Yeah.
That's the same thing, right? If you see that I pay people money in Venmo, right, that if I borrow $50 from you, you see I've paid all these people $50. So, it kind of connects the dots, and it's social currency. I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but I completely understand why they accept that as a way to do it.
Yeah. It's so yeah, I think Office 365 is moving that way, and you're right that we need to adjust our thinking about that. And again, even if you've got a group connected SharePoint site, you can get into all those SharePoint pages and change all those permissions. I don't know that I recommend it, but it is there if you absolutely have to. I assume all those pages will always be there. Maybe not. It does create kind of an unexpected experience for folks who don't have 15 years of SharePoint experience like you and I do to have those, but it is there if you need it, I guess.
Yeah, no, this is a tough topic. I'm glad that Stefan kind of was brave enough to write some ideas down to at least move the conversation forward. So kudos to him.
Yeah, it was an interesting idea that, once I saw the title, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Why did I not think of that also?
Yeah, Mark Crispin was in the chat room and he was listening. He heard this idea, and it looks like he's left us to go work on it. He apparently is infatuated with this concept. He's putting it in right now.
I'll throw that link in the chat room so the rest of you can leave as well. Go see that one. But he's got some good stuff. He did some, when I was in Sweden, I saw one of his presentations, and he was talking about this new way to design pages in Office 365 using some framework that made them have smaller payloads so they worked more efficiently and they loaded more efficiently, and you could rearrange them so they fit on phone and all that. I understood about 17% of what he said. and I don't mean that. So, he's from Austria. I don't mean that to be an accent thing. His English is as good as mine, but just the concepts. And there was a bunch of other developers in the room and they were all like oohing and on and just getting all excited and antsy. And I'm like, I don't understand this. I don't, but it was interesting.
Yeah. No, that's always embarrassing when you realize that most Europeans' English is better than ours.
Yeah, and he speaks 17 different flavors of English, and he knows exactly. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we won't talk about how our shortcomings. That's not what this podcast is about.
No, that would be a much longer podcast. Probably have to be 2 of them a week if we're going to talk about that.
So then B's pretty exciting here, right? You've got finally Microsoft has released a Google G Suite to Office 365 migration tool. That is long overdue.
Yeah, and you and I have talked a lot about our dislike for G Suite and just the Google Cloud apps, Sheets and Docs and all of that. I don't know if the migration experience was part of the reason why companies stayed with G Suite instead of moving to Office 365, but I think this can't hurt at all, this migration tool.
Yeah. I get it, right? This is back to the generational thing. So they grew up on Google. They start a company. They're like, oh, we'll just use G Suite. But man, if you look at Office 365 for 5 minutes, you will realize that G Suite is flipping terrible and not meant for actual business things. It was fine for your college, your college group to work on a paper, but that's about as far as Google G Suite is worth a darn. And move, people. If you haven't moved, you probably wouldn't listen to the show if you were a G Suite user, but I'm insulted by G Suite, quite frankly.
It is frustrating to use. And I think part of that is, you and I are just so entrenched in the Microsoft way of doing whatever that anything that doesn't do it that way is frustrating. But yeah, trying to share things inside of Docs and Sheets and all of that is just, Drives me crazy. But yeah, Microsoft has that out now. There'll be a link in the show notes, but you can use that. And it's going to show up in Office 365. So it's one of those things that you're going to go into the admin center and there's a tools link in there and it's going to pop up in there as soon as it's available on your tenant. You'll be able to download the binaries and do it. And yeah, I don't have any G Suite tenants to migrate to test it, but I will be looking at it because I think this will be one of the things. If I come across somebody who's got G Suite, I'm like, have I got good news for you?
Run away. Yeah, I haven't, since I've got now the startup space for the most part, I do not run into G Suite anymore, right? It's really just those darn 20-year-old startups that are the purveyors of it. And I'm not talking to a lot of those people lately, so I'm not having to deal with it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. And I don't know how it was when you were in school, but when I was in school, it was Apples everywhere, Apple IIe's, Apple 2GS's and all that. And a lot of that pulled forward, and there was like a whole generation of people that just use Apple because that's what they were used to in school. And I think we're seeing some of that now with Google, again, because the Google platform is free for consumers in most cases, so people just get used to it. It's quick, it's easy to use, and then as they move into startups and doing whatever, they just pull that forward.
Yep.
I don't know what Microsoft's answer to that is. Not that Microsoft's doing poorly. They're doing okay, but I'm curious how that works.
Yeah, and I feel the same way with Chromebooks, right? My kids use Chromebooks every day at school, and I'm like, oh, it's gross.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. So my kids are the same. The school, it's one laptop per child and it's Chromebooks. So I got my kids Chromebooks so that they would be proficient on the thing that they're going to use to learn. And I'm sure it's the same with your kids. It works fine for watching YouTube videos 12 hours a day. So it is everything. But I will say that with a Chromebook, I am less worried about them getting viruses or getting things corrupt or doing whatever than I would have been had I got them a Windows laptop. And it hurts my heart to say that because I do think that Windows is a better platform, but I can see the value of that, I guess.
No, it's tough, and kids on the internet, that's such a hard conversation still.
Yep. But yeah, so my kids have Chromebooks and it works well. And I mean, just like I expected, whenever one of their friends at school has problems on their Chromebook, my kids are able to step up and, figure the thing out. And mostly the experience hasn't been bad. They can print to my printers. They can Chromecast to the TVs. It's worked out okay. It would kill me. I was just reading, tech news, and companies like HP and all that are putting out like enterprise Chromebooks. And I just can't even imagine what my day would be like if that was my machine, was a Chromebook to do work.
No, thank you. But I mean, we know we've been trying to do like desktop as a service forever, the virtual desktop stories, right? I mean, big companies want to do it, so maybe Chromebooks will be their run at it, but it just seems awful.
Yeah, I'm still using Windows S mode on my Surface Go, which is sort of Microsoft's current iteration of that idea. It's pretty usable. I could make that work, I guess. Again, I work in Microsoft products and those apps all work. Stacy in the chat room is saying she's got Chromebook users and they want to do Power Apps. I don't know what the Power Apps experience is on Chromebooks. But on my Surface Go, which is kind of, again, Microsoft's run at this kind of idea, it works okay. So maybe there's hope.
Yeah, and Stacy and I kind of talked about it a little bit, right? Because she was trying to figure out low-cost devices. And we have some customers that have rolled out, believe it or not, iPods. That's been like a great form factor. They buy, $200 iPods, install the Power Apps app, and then run, their barcode scanners or their pictures or whatever the app is.
Yep.
And the idea is they basically just throw them away. If it's broken, they just straight to the landfill, straight to the ocean, all that bad stuff. But
yeah, go kill some dolphins. Yep.
But they don't want to mess with, because that's one of the big things with Power Apps, right? Is we're enabling non-technical people to finally have a little bit of technology in their lives, and they're just buying these disposable. In all my customers' cases, it's been iPods, but Stacy was thinking about Chromebooks, or she thought about Fires, and I don't want to speak for her, but I know that with the Fires, they have a different store, right? They can't get into the Google Play Store the same way.
You can. It takes you about 5 minutes to get through that, but
you have to hack it. I mean, so yes, supported, but not ideal for what these people are looking for. So I would struggle with that. So
yeah, we did a similar thing at our kids' school. They have a thing called Mileage Club where they encourage kids to go out and run over their lunch period and things like that.
Yep.
And the kids have little I think they're QR codes now, but every lap they do, somebody scans it. And we used to have cards and we would check them off, but now they've moved it to an app, and it was the same deal. They're like, well, we can do this app. What devices do we want to use? So I went out to Amazon and found the cheapest Android phones. They were like $125 a piece, had a camera on them, exactly the lowest version that would run that app. And that's what they use. And when they break, yep, they're like, how do we fix this? We throw it away. We spend another $125. Yep.
Yeah, we still we have Mileage Club, and we still do the cards with a marker, and invariably it's 185 degrees when it's Mileage Club, and I got to stand there in the sun and mark all those things, and yeah, it's terrible. But
I don't know if you. So when I do it, I race the kids. Like if I get some boy that I hear trash talking somebody else about how fast he is, I'm like, all right, you and I are racing to the end of the block. You're a tough guy, and I'll do stuff like that. It's not too bad.
See, I just do this. Yes, I got it. Yes. It's a pretty nice dance.
Yep. So it's interesting what the options are out there. I don't even remember how we were talking about that, but we got off on the tangent.
Cheap disposable power apps. All right, what do we got next? C. That's what we're a little confused on, kind of.
Yeah. So Shane and I were both a little confused on this one. They just announced this week that the files restore option, so this ability to roll back to a point in time, has now been extended to Microsoft Teams. And Shane and I were both a little confused because we thought that was already there because Teams stores its content in SharePoint and the files restore stuff was already in SharePoint. But I'll be honest, I haven't played with it a lot. So I think what they really did was they just put a better UI around the functionality that was already there. But it's like you don't need to worry about losing data. It's just not a thing anymore.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things they also did here, because a lot of people don't readily understand. I know we've talked about it on the show a few times, right? But when you go to Teams and Files, there's really a SharePoint site somewhere underneath the covers, and that's all just going into a SharePoint document library like you've done for 1,000 years. And so I think that's really what happened in this announcement, to your point, right? Is they just put a wrapper so you can just go to one place and be like, oh, I'm getting my Teams files. No, you're just getting a SharePoint file, but you're calling it a Teams file. So if you're happy, they're happy.
Yep.
It was probably a low amount of work for to just make this very important feature more front and center.
Yeah, and the first line of the article about that is data loss is non-negotiable. I don't know that I agree with that, but I'm glad that that's the way that they're going. Microsoft has done a great job of that. We were talking before the show. One of the people that I work with thought that they had lost some files in OneDrive and they were really worried about it. And it's come up a couple of times and it was honest mistakes. But as frantic as this person was and as adamant that they were that these files were gone, in no part of my mind did I think that the files were unretrievable. I'm like, you've got OneDrive, so it's either going to be in the recycle bin or we're going to use the files restore. But, and every time we've been able to bring them back. I don't even worry about it.
Yeah, that was always a big concern, right, with all moving to the cloud, right? What are we going to do for backups and things like that? And Microsoft just keeps checking off boxes around, nope, we got you covered. Nope, we got you covered. And that's what people want. Yeah.
So you're talking about how there hasn't been much news coming out. That was one of the things that came out. But again, is it really new news or I don't know?
Well, there was 8,715 blog posts about it. So I'm guessing it was almost as bad as SharePoint Designer is free.
And that's one thing that I struggle with as a person who blogs and tweets and all that is after I see it about 10,000 times, I'm like, there is no reason for me to tweet this or blog it. But then I forget that people that follow my blog don't necessarily follow all the other ones, but I don't want to add to the noise. I just talk myself out of it.
I'm with you. And I was just working before the show on the Power Apps 911 newsletter, and I'm really just putting a bunch of the announcements in there. And I'm like, if you followed all the same things I did, you've seen all this. But if you don't, which is probably a much higher percentage of people, then you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So,
yeah. Yep. Brett says, well, then retweet a good blog. Yeah, that's that. And I do a little bit of that. I probably could do more of that. That's a good compromise. Another thing, and I just saw this apparently came out yesterday, and I think you probably suffer from this too, is scheduling for professionals like ourselves. And I don't remember if we talked about this a couple of months ago. There's an article about how our schedules and Outlook work exactly the opposite of the way that they should. Instead of our schedule and Outlook being how we get things done, it really exposes the time that we get things done to other people so they can put stuff there so we can not get things done. Which is really the case. Like I've got some stuff, and you know you're the same way. A bunch of the work that you do is just you making a Power App. For me, it's writing PowerShell scripts or moving data around or doing whatever. And that's flexible work. I can do it whenever. But then somebody sees that I'm not doing anything at 9 o'clock, and like, we should have a meeting, and now I can't do the work because So there's some breakage there. Another problem that comes from that is all meetings are blocked at an hour. So, you have an 8 to 9, a 9 to 10, a 10 to 11, and there's no time to go to the bathroom or anything like that. And it's pretty common for meetings to run over. So that 9 to 10 might go into 10:05, but then now you're late for your 10 o'clock, and then you're the jerk because everybody hates going to a meeting and you can't start till 10 after 10 because, so there's just a lot of problems there. Tony Redmond posted a blog post yesterday, and I had never seen this before, that Outlook has the ability to schedule meetings for less than an hour. So you can say, I'm going to pick a meeting for an hour, and if you schedule it for an hour, Outlook actually makes it for 55 minutes. And if you schedule it for 2 hours, it actually makes it for an hour 50 to try to build some of that in. I don't know if anybody actually adheres to that, but I'm going to start trying it. I like it.
Yeah. So it's funny, back in my corporate days, I wrote my meeting manifesto at one point. That's the type of thing I do. And I couldn't get anyone to buy into this concept of basically meetings were 25-minute blocks. So half hour was 25, an hour was 50, et cetera, et cetera. And, give people time to go to the bathroom and move from point A to point B. And no one could handle the idea because, just like you, I'm scheduled to an inch of my life. That's why I work so much on the weekends, right? Because the one time I can sit down and write a Power App for 4 hours without anyone bothering me, and it's so much more productive. But meetings, the good news is I've gotten old and grouchy, right? So now I'll start a meeting. I'll be like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I don't know what else to tell you people. I'm going to the bathroom.
Yep. Yeah, I remember a long time ago, probably 15 years ago, one of the developers that worked at a company I worked at was on vacation. He had talked about, hey, I'm going to be on vacation this week, but he was in the office and he was working. And I'm like, what are you doing? I thought you were on vacation. He's like, I am. I'm like, I think you and I have different definitions of vacation. And for him, vacation was the time where he could work without accepting any meetings. So I'm like, how sad is that? But now I'm further along in my career and I totally get it.
Yep. I build Power Apps every Saturday and Sunday because, same reason. No, I do not take meetings. I've had customers ask for weekend meetings. I'm like, no, I'm drawing a line somewhere. I finally found the spot, and it is having a meeting with you on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and Mark Chrisman in the chat room is talking about how he doesn't have that in his revision at work, and I don't have the blog post in front of me. I don't know which version of Outlook that takes. You and I have talked in the past about how there is a difference between Outlook 2019 and Outlook 365. And if you're running Outlook 365, there's different rings. So I don't know which combination of what and what you need to have. It is in my version that I'm running. I verified that for the show.
It's not in mine.
I can never remember where to find the version of Outlook anymore, so I can't.
I'm wondering I'm probably, because I'm on the faster Windows 365 build, so I must just haven't gotten the update yet.
Yeah, I've got it in Outlook for Windows. So that's the one. Yeah, I have no idea which version I'm running, but it's in here. I can see it.
Yeah, there's speaking of that tab now, since we're all looking at that instead of paying attention to the show, there's a great time zones option in there that I use a lot as well. So you can go in and define, right, so my calendar shows, the primary is Eastern, but then I can add additional time zones so they show up on the left-hand side. So when I'm looking at my calendar, I have both the Eastern time zone and GMT side by side for all the slots. Because scheduling with people here in the 3 U.S. time zones is pretty straightforward, but...
And wait till you find out there's 4.
Are you including Hawaii? Or wait.
Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific. Those are the 4 that are on the continent, and then there's Hawaiian and Alaska.
Sorry, I meant the 3 extra in addition to me. It doesn't take any effort to schedule a meeting in the Eastern time zone.
I don't believe
I know the time zones. But I have customers who are either in GMT or GMT +1. And so I just keep a column for GMT so that way we can always just talk in GMT time. it cuts down on the confusion for the most part. So that's a nice little feature in Outlook.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've done, because I've got customers all over, is I just start putting my time zone in everything. So I'm like, hey, I'm available, 8:30 CDT to 9 CDT, and that's just a matter of a thing. Now, we were talking about where to find which version you've got. If you're in Outlook, go to the backstage and go to Office Account, and it will show you which version you're running a bunch of information there. The version that I have that does have that meeting short thing is version 1903, and it's the click to run version. And I'm in the monthly channel. I don't know if that helps.
See, now how? My machine has changed channels on me. That's my other one. Whatever. I'm somehow still in the semi-annual channel on this machine, but the other one. Whatever. Yep. Move on.
Yep. So that's a good thing. I will try it. We'll see if it actually does any good. So this, we talk a lot about Microsoft technology and things that are going on, but I'm a nerd. I'm a tech nerd at heart. And what is it? A year or so ago, 6 months ago, a bunch of the main phone manufacturers started talking about making foldable phones, and I never really knew if I thought this was a good idea or not. But Samsung released their Galaxy Fold here a couple of weeks ago, and man, surprise, surprise, it's got all kinds of problems and the screen's ripping, and I think they are pulling them all back and canceled some events around it, and it's been kind of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, the downside for them is I didn't see any news about them releasing those out. First time I saw news about those was when they started breaking.
Well, and I think they sent them out to the reviewers, and 100% of the reviewers had the phone broke. So we well, maybe not everybody knows, but for big sites like, CNET and Ars Technica and Thurrott and those guys, they all get this stuff ahead of time.
Yep.
But they're under embargo. So they get, Paul's able to use the phone for a couple of weeks, and then when Samsung releases, we're releasing this phone, then Paul can drop his article right away, but he can actually have some meat to it because he's been using the phone for a while. And I think with this, Samsung sent all these phones out, and every single one of them failed in exactly the same way. And then as soon as the embargo was, over, that's all we saw. They just dumped them. And
I can't. I don't know. How did that happen, right? I mean, if every single one of these reviewers, and I'm sure it's not every single one, but if an overwhelming majority of these reviewers all had the same problem, how did Samsung miss this in their own testing? Did they just ship it to them before they actually said, hey, maybe I should walk around with one of these for a couple of days?
Well, I think it is a combination of things. Number one is they're trying to make this phone, they're trying not to make the fold obvious, so that when you have it open, there's not okay. One of the ways that they've done that is they've got like a screen protector on the phone that kind of holds everything together. I don't use screen protectors on my phone. They kind of annoy me. I don't like the feel of them. And so a bunch of the reviewers, not all, but a bunch of the reviewers saw the screen protector on the phone and said, no, I don't want that. And they took it off, where it was an actual part of what kept the phone together, not just a thing that kept you from scratching your screen. So they did the thing we all do. They didn't read a word of the instructions. They opened it up, they saw the screen protector, and they peeled it off. So that was part of it. Another thing was they tested the folding, a million times, but they did it with, robotic testers, and they just don't handle phones and fold them the same way that you and I do. And that's another part of the reason. So
that's it's interesting. You don't like screen protectors. I put one on my phone like 3 seconds after I got it because I don't want scratches.
I don't want scratches, clearly. And then the other thing is my phone has like the beveled edges, so screen protectors get a little weird. If I have one on my phone, I don't hate it. I don't take it off, but I don't go out of my way to. My wife's the same way. When she buys a phone, just part of that process is she buys a case and she buys a screen protector. That's just part and parcel.
Yep.
So in the chat room, Brett's talking about how he doesn't like the idea of the foldable phone. I'm not against it. I can see some times when it would be nice. I think we have all, especially once you get to be our age, all at that point where we're looking at something on our phone and we really can't wait to get on something with a bigger screen so we can read the thing or see a bigger version of the picture, whatever. Wouldn't it be great if we could just snap our fingers and that picture on that device in our hands was twice as big? I think that's got some appeal to it.
Yeah, it's maybe we just have to admit we're getting older eyes, right? We need bigger stuff.
Yeah, there's no denying it. The other bad thing about this Galaxy Fold, again, I'm not against the idea. I would have to play with one without breaking the screen. That phone was $2,000. Oh my God. So they're gonna have to come down a lot before I'll get excited about that.
Well, that's so interesting, right? Because I mean, I struggled clearly forever with my broken old iPhone because I didn't want to buy $1,000 phone. But if I, if I could remove myself from the big number of 1,000 and think about how many minutes a day I look at that thing, $1,000 is pennies a minute, right? I mean, the math would be so easy, but we all just see the big number. And I mean, I'm guilty as anyone, right? I'm not judging, but it's really tough to be like, man, if I realize I spend 4 hours a day on that darn thing, I think $1,000 is probably a solid investment.
Well, and not only 4 hours a day, but it is like your main thing. So, we were talking before the show, all the stuff going on, the events towards the end of the year. If I didn't have a way to immediately communicate with my wife and my parents and all that via this phone, like society would break down. Like so yesterday, my wife and I had a lunch thing with an investor group. And it's an annual thing, and it's always at the same place. It was at a different place this year. And for whatever reason, I trusted myself less, and I was getting ready to go there. I'm like, I should really look. So I'm in my car. I pulled my phone up. Oh, yeah, it's at a different place. And I was so proud of myself that I didn't text her and say, hey, was it the right place? So I show up, and then like 15 minutes later, she sends me a text, and she's like, hey, it's at this other place. And I'm like, I didn't think that I actually asked her that question. I thought I just thought about it and then looked, but why is she telling me? She had went to the wrong place. And so she was trying to head, but that instant communication. So not only is it 4 hours, it's 4 really important hours of time that you spend using that phone. And yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, so if I think about my yesterday, I had to sit at kids basketball for an hour and a half and I'm watching dribble basketballs. And so I sat there and worked the whole time, right? On my phone, I responded to 417 YouTube comments and I mean, so yeah, a bigger phone, to your point earlier, would have made my life a lot easier. I mean, yeah, it's a no-brainer, but we all just get hung up on it's $1,000 or $2,000 or $10,000 because it's a big number all at once.
It really, especially when they crack all the time. So I'll be curious if Samsung can get this figured out and be interested.
I'm certain they'll get it figured out.
You've got some Power App stuff. Tell us what's new in the world of Power Apps.
Oh, goodness gracious. So those guys have been on a tear in like micro updates, right? Kind of, little things. It seems so insignificant, but they're worth mentioning. So for example, now in your formulas, you can have a semicolon at the end and it will not error out. And so if you're not too familiar, when we write formulas, we want to have more than one formula. We do a semicolon between those to string a bunch of things into one action. That's great, but if you had a semicolon at the end in the past, it would just explode all over you, and the error message was 5 pixels wide, so you could barely tell it was erroring for that. Yeah. So they fixed that. They added a new feature around being able to preview your results, so you can hover over a formula or a variable, and it'll tell you not only the data type, but then also kind of the values associated with it. So
nice.
Yeah, troubleshooting and just knowing what data you're seeing is really, that was a giant step forward. I think that, I don't think anyone appreciates that one, right? Because it's like, oh, what do I got to go to effort to see my errors? But as a guy who troubleshoots Power Apps for a living, that was a monumental change.
Excellent.
And then icons, we just like our icons, our smiley faces, our save symbol, aka a floppy disk picture. We really enjoy all of those, and so they've added a bunch of enhancements there to make those a little easier to work with and manage. Because when you're building a good UI for your users, right, they expect the floppy disk picture instead of big buttons that say save and things like that. So.
Yep. And kind of on the heels of that, the Office suite of applications are starting to roll out with their new icons. So that's been updates all over, icons changing on my phone and my computer.
Yeah, I remember Mark Rackley got really upset at the first announcements.
He gets really upset about 7 times a week about yeah.
I don't think I ever told you. So he was in such a rager about that at the same time as writing one of those Petri.com articles. So I put in there about the icons, and I said, thanks to Mark. Just to really, it amused me. No one else cared, but it amused me.
Yes.
So and then I popped off a video over the weekend or yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever day Monday was, around how we do Power Apps, like working with files and things like that here at Power Apps 911. And so, it's like taking an example where you want to have one-to-many. You want to let users take one picture or 7 for their expense report or for a purchase order app or anything like that, and how we store and manage and manifest those. So really a very complete solution. It included Azure Blob Storage, Azure SQL, SharePoint, the whole kit and caboodle. But that was a tough one. Well, A, because of Logitech's problems. But what was tough about that one was like, it was great content as a content creator, right? It was like something I was like, this is awesome. People will enjoy this and really learn. But at the same time, it was kind of a questionable decision from a business point of view, because it was like, this is kind of how we do this. I guess it's literally the training I give my internal consultants. So should I really be putting this on YouTube for the whole world?
Yeah.
I did, and I mean, I'm good with it, but at the same time, I can definitely see the argument of you're an idiot. You should not be telling people, for free how to do such things. So
us being free with that kind of stuff, I think, has been part of our success. I feel the same way when I blog stuff. I'm like, do I want to show people how I do all these crazy things? Yeah. I got to work out for you.
Yeah, one of the things, because it kind of keeps coming up, right? I keep putting out stuff that people are like, why is that out there? And I'm like, well, I look at it, right? I need Power Apps. I need the Power Apps ecosystem as a whole to get better, right? I need the whole world to be smarter at building and make better Power Apps so the pie gets bigger. And then, hopefully my take of that gets bigger. And hopefully I can just stay on top of the story, right? So I can kind of be out there in front of all that. And yeah, so I'm with you, right? I completely agree with this idea. I want to share as much as I can, because it's all about just making the Power Apps ecosystem as a whole larger. So.
Yep, I got to work out for you. All right, so we're coming up here. You've got a couple of rants that you want to go on.
I don't have to go on the rants. Let's just hear your 3D printer adventures. We'll end on a positive
All right.
note.
So a week and a half ago, I bought a 3D printer. I bought a TEVO Tornado, TEVO Tornado, kind of a higher end, lower end beginner printer. So it wasn't the cheapest one out there, but it's clearly not, a big thing. And it has been an adventure in that I don't do any of that. I'm a technical guy, but I haven't spent a lot with that. And getting it up and going has been a whole lot more work than I expected it to be. 3D printers don't come as a big piece, so you have to put it together. And they expect you to know a lot of things about 3D printers. The instructions were not as good as I've gotten. Like for I mount TVs on the wall and build furniture from kits and all that. Those instructions are really good. Lots of pictures and that. The 3D printer instructions were not good. And there were pieces of the process that they just left out. And there were pieces of the process where I would look at something and look at what I had. And I'm like, I can't do that. This will not, there's something that I'm missing. So I would go to YouTube and I would find some videos. I'm like, oh yeah, mine doesn't look like theirs, but nowhere does it tell me to do this. So I've been fighting with that. I was able to print a couple of things the other day, some pretty basic things, but I haven't been able to really make anything substantial, anything that I'm proud of yet, but I'm getting closer. And I work on it for like a half an hour every night. There's like a half an hour of time where I can do this. And the thing that I tried to do last night was there is a program called Octoprint that people use as like a controller for their 3D printer. So if you have a 3D printer, you can usually put like an SD card in it. And once a file has been made to print with the specifications you want for the printer you have, you can just put the card in and print it out. But you need to know all those settings. And most 3D printers have a USB port, so you can plug it into your computer and do all that stuff and send your files over that way after you've sliced them and all that. Octoprint is one of those things, but there's a version that works for Raspberry Pis. So you can just hook a Raspberry Pi up to your 3D printer. There's this thing called Octopi, sets up a web interface, so I can drag an image over or a file over to the web interface. This is my printer, this is the thing, and it will spit it out that way. And it even supports a webcam so that you can go to the web page to see how far along your printing is, because these prints take hours. You just never know when they're done. So I got a Raspberry Pi set up with it, got everything put on, got it configured, but just sitting by itself. Moved it, call it 4 feet to the right on the place that I needed, set it, hooked up to my printer, and now it can't find my network. Oh. So it could... So I'm like, oh my God. And so I spent, my half hour, 45 minutes last night trying to get this Raspberry Pi back on the network, and it won't. But it has been fun, frustrating. I like where it's going.
It's good educational stuff. Right? I almost bought a 3D printer for the same thing, just for the learning, not as much as the output, but just to go learn and understand it a little better. So I'm a little jealous of you. I don't have the time to embark on this adventure with you, or I would. But no, I like that you're doing this.
Yeah, so I'll be printing out crap hopefully in the next week or so. We just, like I said before the show, you and I were talking, this couple of weeks here is just really busy with things, so I haven't been able to do it. All right, so for the community stuff, we've got SharePoint Saturday Nashville, June 15th. That's Daniel Glenn and his friends down there. On August 10th, we've got SharePoint Saturday Charlotte. That's your man.
Daniel Christian.
Yep, that's the one. I can never remember if it's Dan or Daniel, and I didn't want to say it wrong. So we got those. I'm speaking at SharePoint Saturday Atlanta on May 11th.
Woo-woo.
Yeah, yep. And I got to get back in time for Mother's Day on the 12th, but I've got that all planned out. Then a few days later, you and I are going to be in Las Vegas at the SharePoint conference. Looking forward to that. A lot of excitement brewing around that. You and I are doing an admin pre-day conference on Monday, and then just lounging the rest of the week.
I know. We're going to go to some sick raves and, go see a bunch of Australian men. I mean, it'll be a good time. So
there will be much thunder. Yeah. So if you haven't signed up for that, go out to SharePoint Conference NA, I believe is the URL, and sign up for that. If you're at that conference and you see Shane or I, for goodness sakes, come up and introduce yourself. We're big friendly guys. Would love to talk to you and just say hey, talk about what you're doing. It's a good time. We like it.
And we're huggers, so just feel free.
Yes, we are. We are huggers. And then you've got an event after that. Tell the folks about that.
Yeah, so then I'll go to Atlanta in June, so June 9th to 11th for a business application summit. Still working on, I'm doing at least one session so far, but we're still kind of, negotiating and bribing people. I'm still trying to get on stage a little more. We'll see how that bowls out. But either way, if you're doing Power Apps, Power BI, Flow, Excel, Dynamics, any of those type of things.
The Power Platform.
Is that what they call this? Good call. Mm-hmm. So did you ever figure out what D was?
So I've got it mostly set up. They haven't announced this, so I'm not announcing it, but I've got another remote user group talk that I'm doing. And so once that, I don't want to be the one to break that unless they tell me that I can break that. So
I mean, I'm sure the internet beat writers are on the tips of their fingers, like, oh.
Yep. And I do, and I think it's public, but I'm going to be on the Power Scripting Live podcast, which is a PowerShell podcast. I don't have that one in there, but I'm going to be on there again sometime next month. I forget when that is.
Very cool. I didn't know about that one. Congrats.
Yep. So a lot of busy stuff, a lot of stuff out there. So we're at the part of the show now, folks, where if you're here for the tech content, you can go ahead and sign off. If you somehow have not watched the second episode of the 8th season of Game of Thrones, and again, the production cycle for this podcast is going to be 3 or 4 weeks, so I don't know how that would be possible. But we will be discussing that. So if you don't want that spoiled or just don't care, we will see you next week.
Bye, people.
Okay, so we're still here. All right, so again, talking about SharePoint or Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 2. Spoilers abounding. We will ruin it for you if you haven't seen it yet.
To be clear, though, it's only Episode 2 spoilers where neither one of us believe in the people that are cheating and trying to, we don't know nothing past what HBO has aired on Episode 2 of Season 8.
Yep. So what were your impressions?
Another solid episode. It was, it was not as fun-filled and action-packed as I'd hoped. I forget what the name was exactly, but basically it should have been called The Longest Night again, right? Because it was just them kind of all sitting around and these people talking about this stuff, these people talking about that stuff, and which was good. I enjoyed it, but I was really looking forward to some epic war World 3 type of battle going down.
Yeah, I was too. And then so the episode was like 66 minutes, 68 minutes, something like that. After 30 or 40 minutes of me waiting for the fun stuff, it occurred to me there's not enough time. The battle that you and I are waiting for has to be all in one episode, and it can't fit in the rest of this episode. So there were a lot of highlights for me. I think if you watch the HBO after commentary, There's always some good things in there. And they were talking about how this was the last half of the episode for sure was about how all of these people are dealing with the impending we're all going to die, and how they each dealt with it differently, how their characters have come to that spot, and how they're just, like Tyrion and the boys were sitting around drinking. That was the way they were dealing with the fact that they were probably all going to die horrible deaths the next day. And just so just the calm before the storm, it was what they were looking at. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought Arya going off and having sex with what's his name was just weird.
Gendry, yeah, that was. I mean, clearly there was interest there. I didn't expect it to be quite that, whatever. I saw the actress Maisie Williams posted a Twitter thing. So apparently, a lot of folks were really upset about the fact that she looks underage.
Right.
She's 22. It's all good. But she had a tweet, some response to one of those. She's like, "You think you were uncomfortable? My mom, my stepdad, and all my siblings have watched that scene." So, yeah, I get that. But that was her way of dealing with the fact that she's probably going to die the next day. Was there were things in her life she hadn't done yet, and she was curious how that was going to play out, I guess. And one of the things that I read afterwards was, in one of the scenes leading up to that, she goes down to the forge and Gendry's down there making the dragonstone things, and she's kind of flirting around with him and all that. Apparently they shot that scene almost scene for scene from the first time she met him. So it was kind of a full circle, and they showed some screenshots of that. So that was cool that they think of that level of detail.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of that type of stuff. They do a really good job of stitching it all back together or repeating, right? Kind of using the same stuff. So speaking of that scene, though, when he showed up, right, so she's sitting there shooting arrows.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that the faceless man's face was in the background?
No, I did not.
See, and this is weird. I don't understand, because I saw it live, and I went back and watched it again just to make sure I saw what I'd seen. And so, like, at the 42-minute mark, the dude's face, and I don't know if it's a mask or if it's him, but it's in the background for like 2 seconds, and I just didn't know. Like, I got creeped out, like she was about to die or something from him, like he was going to show up and be like, you've undone this, and then he comes in and they're having sex, and so I've moved on. But no one that I've seen has made any reference to the fact that his face is clearly in that scene.
So I have not seen that, and we talked about how we're not going to talk about any of the crazy things, but there are some theories about the faceless men, and there are some theories about things that have happened that we've not thought the faceless men were involved in that they potentially have been. So I don't know if we want to go down any of those roads or not, but I'm not surprised with some of the theories that I've seen.
So I think theories are fair game, right? It's not someone who's watched the episode and is spoiling it for us, but because there's a Reddit theory that I found very interesting. I read about this morning. What's your theory? And if you don't want to hear it, turn off the show.
This is complete fan theory, and I find it fairly ludicrous myself, but you brought up the faceless men. There was a theory that I read that Littlefinger, Peter Baelish, is not actually dead, and that he has a significant role coming forward. And basically what they based it on was the way that character has dealt with times when he's been backed into a corner in previous seasons compared to how he handled himself when he was killed at the end of last season, and some stark contrasts. And then the fact that his family and his background is from Braavos, where the faceless men are, and that he has, there were scenes where he had reactions to references to the faceless men that were not what you would think they would be. And so the theory is that he did not die at the hands of Sansa and Arya like we thought he did at the last episode, that they had snuck in a faceless man or used the faceless man techniques to put somebody else in it, that he's really alive somewhere.
I've
so that was
any of those.
Yeah.
That's so there's so many loose ends like that, right? So many things that, because they've taught us to expect exactly what we're not thinking of, that you have to live in fear of those type of things showing up.
Yeah.
Well, not live in fear, but live in like suspense. Like you don't want to be surprised if all of a sudden he comes dashing in and saves the day or takes over the world or kills everyone, right?
Ends up on the Iron Throne. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, who sits on the Iron Throne in the very, and is that like how the show ends? Is that the very last moment of like the last episode is just someone planting their butt in that seat and being like, bink.
Got it. So what was the thing that you read on Reddit?
So it was talking about the White Walkers rolling in. And so when they come, right, because at the very end of the episode, we see the army out there at the edge, right? But we don't see the dragon.
Right? There were no dragons at all referenced or anything in this episode, which I found odd.
Yeah, and so in some ways I kind of accept that because I know that the dragons are really expensive. So there's been episodes before where I thought the dragon should have had a cameo, but I appreciate that's probably $1 million cameo, so they skipped it. So, but what they said was basically, the only chance of that dragon being killed, or the best chance of that dragon being killed, is if it goes and fights the other two dragons, right?
Yes, yes.
So right now, what Night King is doing, he's not headed to the tree and to the showdown with Bran and all that. He took the dragon and he is going straight to Westeros. He's going to go and just attack them right now while the dragons are out of the picture, up in defending Winterfell.
So you don't think he was outside of Winterfell?
Yeah, that's what this theory was, right? Was that he and his dragon are just going to go kill everybody in Westeros and turn them into a bigger army, 1 million strong of undead, so then they can then go and take Winterfell because he knows that all the people that could actually stop him are in Winterfell. So he's not really attacking now. He's just kind of distracting them while he goes and kills the people that can't stop him.
Yeah, well, I think the ice dragon could be killed with Dragonstone.
Right. But I mean, the best chance of him dying, though, is right as the other two dragons kicking his butt.
But can they? I guess with fire. Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah, I think next week is the battle at Winterfell. And one thing, and we talked about this a little bit last week. Always watch the opening credits. Like in every other show that I watch, I skip the opening credits and I complain about it the whole time. In this one, I almost want to watch it frame by frame because they map out things that are happening. And the opening credits have basically showed that army working towards Winterfell. So I think the big battle is going to be at Winterfell.
Well, and at the end, the army's there, right? I mean, they are there, but the Night King and the Dragon are not.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
So
do you think he's going down to King's Landing or something like that?
Yeah, so he's going to go down there and, kick some butt down there while these guys are fighting, right? So the battle's going to happen, but it's not the epic be-all, end-all. It's really a diversion tactic, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, I think the Ice Dragon's going to make a lot of people. I hope they're wearing their brown pants when the Ice Dragon shows up. I think that's going to be, yeah. Another fun part of this episode was Tormund. I think he got some of the greatest lines in this episode. So the first one was as they're heading to Winterfell, and he gets there. I can't remember who he turned to. He's like, "Is the big woman still here?" Like his infatuation with Brienne is just adorable. So that and then the whole him telling his the fabled tale of how he got to be a giant was that when he was 10 years old he slew a giant and then crawled in bed with the giant's wife and she didn't notice it and she suckled him for months and giant's milk. That was I mean.
Yeah, he's he does. He's such a hard guy. But man, when she's on the screen, he's just like a puppy. He's just like, there she is. Like, oh my God, I love her. Oh, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, and that was funny because like you're rooting for that. I mean, because he is such a great character, and his infatuation with her is not at all creepy. It's adorable. So you want that, but that same episode, that same scene, Brienne's love for Jaime was so overt and over the top that you're like, she would just never. Like, I just don't even know how that would work.
Yeah, no, her and Jaime are definitely both infatuated with each other at this point. And
yeah, and I thought I love that. So there's just a bunch of memes on the internet, with the narrator coming over a scene and her saying, when it came up, her saying, well, I don't even want to be a knight. I don't want to be a sir. The narrator, but she does, she very clearly. So the whole Jaime knighting her, that was another way everybody was dealing with tomorrow's really going to suck. We're probably all going to die. Before I do that, you're in.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great thing to add.
No, that was a nice touch, and yeah, and that whole I thought that was a great exchange. Those guys all sitting around. I didn't want it, right, because I wanted to get to the battle, but I thought it was a great set of just guys being guys. I mean, she's obviously not a guy, but
she's one of the guys, yeah.
And then and then of course we end with Jon and Dany. Jon telling Dany, and I'm like, why don't you two just finish this conversation real quick? Just so do you hate each other? Do you love each other?
She's torn. Yeah. She has been singularly focused on a thing for, well, a decade now.
Yep.
That's going to be tough for her to figure out what to do. Yeah.
And he doesn't even want it, right? I mean, in theory,
And
he
that's,
doesn't want it.
yeah. Yeah. He is definitely a reluctant leader. So I think he would give that all to her. Um, yeah. So I'm curious how that plays out. I think it's going to bring up a bad part of her personality, I think.
Yeah. And I guess the good news is I could see her just walking out, but she can't. It's kind of too late for that since
They need her. They need her in a bad way. A couple other things that were interesting was Bran and Jamie finally had their discussion about, hey, remember that time you pushed me out a window because you were boning your sister? That conversation was a long time coming, and I don't think that went the way any of us thought it was going to go. Bran was like, stuff happens.
But I mean, Bran was very clear he's not Bran anymore, right? He doesn't consider himself that person, so he's like, it sucks you did that to a dude, but I'm not that dude, so.
Yeah. And they've done a good job with Jamie's redemption story. He is a sympathetic character now, at least to us, to the viewers. So I'm curious what role he plays going forward. And the fact when he came up and told Brienne, I didn't show up here to take charge. I can't fight the way I used to. I came here to serve, under you. I thought that was a very, very good line.
Yeah. Speaking of people showing up, assassin dude is somewhere with his crossbow headed for Tyrion, right? I mean,
yeah,
they can do something crappy like Tyrion's going to survive the White Walkers, and this dude's going to walk up like, "Hey, good job winning that fight."
Oop. Yep.
That would be terrible. I don't know if the world's ready to lose Tyrion.
No. That did you ever see the TV show Firefly?
I don't think so.
All right. So it was a Joss Whedon thing, but it got canceled. There's a big story, but they were able to eke out a movie called Serenity. And there was a really great character, well-loved character, Wash. And there was this big epic battle with the big scary bad guys, and he's the pilot of the ship. And they make it through this insurmountable thing, and the bad guys are being bad, and the good guys just barely sleep through. And they crash the ship because they got away from the bad guys. And Wash is the pilot. He's like, see me float like a leaf on the wind, talking about his thing. And just then, like a big harpoon that had been shot from the bad guy's thing goes through his chest and kills him. And you're like, like he survived all of that for this. Oh my God. So yes, I think the Tyrion thing would be hated every bit as much as that.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw that. I don't remember the movie, but it was one of those action. I don't remember what it was, but basically Steven Seagal showed up. This is the height of Steven Seagal in every action movie ever.
Air Force One.
I thought it was an Air Force
Yep.
One. Yes, yeah. And so when he dies in the opening scene, like, oh, I guess he's not here to save the day.
Yeah, I think it was Air Force One, or there was one with Wesley Snipes. But yeah, it was one of those where he was one of the big stars, and like the back of the plane opens up and he falls to his death, and you're like, huh.
Aren't he supposed to be shooting bad guys right now?
There's a lot of movie left, I wonder. Yeah. I also think we talked about this a little bit last week. There were about 4,700 references to how safe everybody's going to be down in the catacombs. So I think that's safe to say that they will not be safe, that there's big things coming down there. A lot of speculation on what that means. A lot of dead folks down there. We know how the Night King feels about the dead folks.
Yep.
John might get to meet his mom, introduce her to his girlfriend. So,
Mom, Dad, yeah.
Well, I don't think his dad's probably buried down there.
I guess John's dad is not down there.
Well, and that was another thing is what happened in Ned's body. Is Sean Bean going to be making a cameo? And then there's been
head, right.
So again, if they send it all back, who knows? There's been a lot of speculation. Also, obviously, we know the Night King can do that, so I think we're all expecting some sort of a whoosh in the Stark mausoleum down there. But then, can Bran do it too, or can he jiggle some stuff and turn them all into good guys? Do we have an army of good dead folks?
Wouldn't that be a nice twist? I haven't thought about that one.
Yeah. So clearly, something is going to happen down there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I saw one of those, once again, Reddit type of things where, so all those tombs or sarcophagus or whatever sarcophagi, apparently they all had swords like in front of them to stop the spirit from coming out, but a bunch of the swords have rusted out, so that wouldn't stop. So, yeah, it's...
Well, and the other thing is now those guys, when they come back to life, they all got swords. And Yeah. So I think the swords will be a big part of all of that as well. And then, so, again, as everybody's dealing with the oncoming death, Grey Worm and Melissa, whatever, the Danny's, those two figuring out what they're going to do with their lives after the big battle. And I'm thinking, that's just wishful thinking. I think this scene tells me that at least one of those two Grey Worm doesn't grow up to wish that he'd had kids. I think,
You're not imagining the two of them sitting on the beach of Bravos drinking pina coladas. That's not how it ends.
40 years reminiscing about the big battle where, no, I think, yeah, I think Grey Worm, I think he takes it.
Yeah. No, it'll be her. It won't be him, right?
I don't know. I mean, it might be her also, but I think when I watched that scene, I'm like, yep, Grey Worm's getting it. And that will be another interesting thing. When the Unsullied, clearly many Unsullied will meet their makers, and whether they can be brought back, I don't know. I mean, they're eunuchs. Maybe that somehow figures in. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, part of it also for me still is, and do we have to resolve all of this like with one episode left so we can then go and see like what do they do with all the people who aren't, here, right? The people across the ocean, right? We talked about that last week, being able to cross water and stuff. So,
yep. And there are 4 episodes left. So there's 6 episodes this season. We've seen 2. There are 4 left. Next week, I think it's one of the long ones, one of the 80-minute ones. And I suspect from beginning to end, it's going to be the Battle at Winterfell. Yeah. I don't think much else will get done.
But I mean, you almost wonder, right? I mean, do they, right? Because that'd be another epic thing to do, right? Is like, have the throne resolved like next episode, right? Like boom, it's done. But now because we got all these other things that need to happen, and
yeah,
I don't know. It's so many ways because these guys are just so unpredictable. I just don't have any good solid thoughts.
Yep. So speaking of unpredictable, obviously next week is going to be a bloodbath, or not a bloodbath for the dead folks. Do you have any strong feelings, any predictions on who gets killed and who makes it?
I mean, in my heart, I want to say all of our main characters live.
All the people we like make it.
And all the bad guys die. I mean, that's what TV teaches me. But this show has taught me that is not the case.
No.
So you figured, Danny and John have to live.
I agree.
I don't. I'm certain people are going to die, but I can't even like say this one or that one because I just can't imagine any of them being dead.
Yep. So I think Grey Worm gets it.
Okay.
I think at least one of the Tormund, Jaime, Brienne love triangle gets it. I don't have a strong feeling as to who I think it is or who I want it to be, but I think Jaime has to last a little longer, but I don't know. Like you said, the show's unpredictable. Yeah, I don't know if Arya gets it or not. They've choreographed that both ways. I don't know, but I think there's going to be a lot of wet eyes. It's going to be very dusty and very many living rooms Sunday night.
Yeah, it's just so hard, right? Because and there's so many angles still. Like Arya, right? I mean, you can see the storyline where she saves the day and assassinates the Night King, right?
And ends up on the throne, yeah.
Yeah, but then you can see the story where, oh nope, little girl got her head chopped off. Like in passing, guy just walked by, killed her, and that's the you can see them doing both so easily. I can't wrap my head around picking where I think this would all go. Bran's another one, right? Does he just end up? Is he working his way towards the throne because he's a crazy man? Right?
Yep. Yeah, and she had Gendry make her that special weapon with the dragon's stone. So yeah, maybe that's got some prominence. Has some, like we talked last week. I feel like every line has significance. Like there are no throwaway lines in these episodes. So that seems like it might be important.
Yeah. You said Mountain and Hound have to fight at some point. So we got right. So that they're really far apart right now. We got to do something to.
So the Hound has to win. Yep. Yeah, right? Or has to live.
But at the same time, right? I mean, well, why? I mean, he's got a big old axe that can kill a bunch of White Walkers, but at the same time,
White Walkers, yeah.
I don't know. I struggle with this idea. I know someone important to me is going to die that I think is impossible for them to die, but Can I just say, like, kill off Theon or somebody like that that I don't care about?
Yeah. So I was. We didn't start it right away. So what time did you start watching
Oh,
on
everybody didn't
Sunday?
start until 11. So I
Oh,
was a couple
super
hours
late.
behind too, yeah.
All right. All right. 'Cause I was thinking about texting you, but then I was like, I don't know where he's at. I don't want to spoil anything. It sounds like you were
Yeah, the
helping
problem
him.
is Nicola doesn't like it at all, so I have to wait until she goes to bed. In both
Gotcha.
episodes, I've watched on my phone. Back to bigger phones. I've watched on my phone in bed because I was just it's 11 o'clock. I don't feel like turning on the TV or going back downstairs myself, so I just sat and
Yeah,
watched it on my
we'll
phone.
use your upgrade to the tablet for Sunday. Watch it on your tablet in bed, so you have a bigger screen.
Yeah, well, no, that reminds me. I need to find. I want to. I'm gonna find that scene I want you to see where the faceless
Yep.
dude is there and just. I don't know how I'm the only one that saw it, but no one else. I've not seen another person tweet about it or write about it. So maybe it was completely insignificant and I'm just overplaying it. But I saw his face.
Yeah, I will look at it. Yeah, so Jill's not afraid. She likes the show. She doesn't like the scary parts. And so I think there's going to be a lot of time on Sunday night with her having the blanket and covering her face.
Yeah.
Like for me, some of the best episodes, Hard Home was one of the best episodes ever. That was the ambush when they were up north of the wall 2 or 3 seasons back. The episode at the end of the last season where they were trapped on the island and they were surrounded. I mean, that's another one of the epic episodes. She doesn't like any of them. They're just too scary. Just the White Walkers.
Yeah, as soon as you say magic or dragons, Nicola's out. She's not
Yeah.
a sci or whatever you call that
Yeah,
genre.
fantasy. Yeah.
Fantasy. There you go. All right, we probably should wrap this thing up because I'm certain we're both supposed to be in meetings or doing something otherwise.
Yep. I had about 3 phone calls come in while I was on. So I might text you Sunday when we start just to see where you're at.
Yeah.
Because it'll be a good one. So thanks to everybody that stuck around. We will hopefully be doing this next week also. Probably many tiers. I'll have the Kleenexes. Here close.
I just got a new box. I'm ready.
And there you go. You're going to need them. So, all right, man. See you next week.
Yep. All right, now I'm
And
sitting-
wait before you kill the stream this time.
Yep. I'm. I guess if anybody's in the chat room, if you'll tell me when you hear this, so I know it's made it all the way through.
I don't know if anybody's still around anymore.
I doubt
I
it.
think we lost them all.
I don't blame them.
Probably safe now. I can turn the end off from here.
Cool. Oh, wait. Brett's typing something.
Oh,
Brett and his junior producer. All right. Cool. I'm out.
excellent. Thanks, Brett.
See ya.